So on this channel, I've predicted that the next generation, 9th generation, will be Microsoft's last console. I've said that based on a multitude of different reasons. If you're interested, you should check out that video. It was titled "The Next Xbox Will Be the Last Xbox," so I'm not going to repeat the talking points I made in that video. If you're interested in knowing why I feel that way, then check that video out. But considering that prediction, obviously if that happens, there will be a huge power vacuum left in console gaming, right? Because you're only going to have Sony and possibly Nintendo if the Switch doesn't completely fail, which also may happen, but that's less likely than Microsoft dropping out. I'm very confident in that happening very soon, a few years from now, at least before the 10th generation comes along. So who can enter the console race? Because throughout the years, console manufacturers have come and go. You know, people have lived most of their life with it being Sony versus Microsoft versus Nintendo, it being a three-way race. But it hasn't always been that way. Sometimes it's been a two-way race, just Nintendo versus Sega. Other times it's been a complete monopoly. Atari just basically having a monopoly, Nintendo basically having a monopoly. And there are other generations where it's been like a five-way or six-way race. So manufacturers come and go, and I've named manufacturers that haven't been making consoles in years. Atari's trying their hand again with the VCS, but that's just going to totally bomb. I'm not even going to talk about Atari. They're not even a factor in any of this. But the recent new players are Sony, who entered in 1995 after Nintendo screwed them over. They were originally supposed to partner together. Nintendo wanted to make a CD-based system, and Sony was going to help them build such a system. It was going to be called the Nintendo PlayStation. It was going to be the successor to the Super Nintendo. But Sony got screwed over by Nintendo. Nintendo decided to partner with Philips. That whole deal also kind of went to shit. But Sony got fed up. They tried to work with Nintendo, and they tried to work with Sega, but both of them kind of shut them away. So Sony said, you know what, screw you. We're going to make our own console. We're going to kick your ass. And that's exactly what they did. They completely destroyed Nintendo and obliterated Sega when they released the PlayStation in the 5th generation. So Sony's very interesting because Sony was a pre-established tech giant. Back in the 90s, they were a very powerful tech company. Now, not so much. All they have, ironically, is PlayStation. They used to have so much other stuff, but they used that capital, though, to develop the PlayStation, and that's how they got into the console race. Common trend, Microsoft, same deal, even bigger, though. They had a lot of capital to invest into the development of the Xbox, and that's how they got into the console race. So, I'm getting at a bigger point here. The only company, the only new console manufacturer that can come into the race would have to be an already pre-established tech giant, like an Apple, like a Google, or an Amazon. Now, all of them have forayed into the console market in the past, interestingly enough. Apple with the Pippin that they released alongside, they had a partnership with Bandai. They released that console in 1995, and it was just a total bust. I don't even know what they were going with that. It's just, I don't know what, it was a very high-end console, but the games on it were just like, not very good, not very interesting. They were just like weird games, like, and the console itself was just, no. But that was Apple's foray. Google has kind of forayed into it a little bit. They've had Google Play, and people have released Android-based consoles using Google's platform. So I guess it doesn't count because Google hasn't released a console on their own, but they're very familiar with the video game industry, I'm very sure. Like they're a big player in the video game industry, actually, with Android. Android gaming is very huge. And then, of course, there's Amazon. They have released, like, Amazon TV consoles in the past. Like, they've released $100 consoles, $200 consoles, but they're based off of Amazon's thing. And I believe that's Android-based, too. Like the Amazon Fire and those type of products. But I'm talking about dedicated consoles that can compete with Sony and Microsoft. Those would be the type of companies that would really be the only ones capable and the only ones that would actually have a chance of succeeding. The only other contenders would be third-party publishers, but I don't think they would want to make their own consoles, because to make their own consoles that can compete, they'd have to have exclusives, and they're making so much money right now as it is that they have no interest in leaving that. So, out of all of them, who has the best chance of releasing a new console? It could also be a big telecom giant too. It could be a Verizon, AT&T, because they're getting into a whole bunch of stuff recently. Verizon, they bought a whole bunch of different companies, nothing gaming related, but just saying, when you think of Verizon, don't just think of a phone service or a TV service or Fios. They're expanding. They bought Yahoo, which was a big acquisition for $5 billion, so they're getting into tech in general. So a lot of these telecom giants are trying to expand. Maybe one of them can, Charter, maybe Comcast, one of those companies can release can have a gaming division. That's also a big possibility, but it's my gut feeling that it's going to be like a Google or an Apple or an Amazon. Those are really the most likely contenders to compete with Sony and Microsoft, because they have a huge amount of capital. They can invest a whole bunch of money into developing, and they all are somewhat familiar with the video game industry because they're already big players in that industry. Amazon, I mean, yeah, because they sell, they're the number one vendor of video games, so maybe they can do that. Like, I mean, they have that knowledge, so they have the knowledge. Obviously, Google and Apple have the knowledge because they dominate mobile gaming, especially Google. And mobile gaming is actually the largest type of gaming. It's even bigger than PC gaming at this point. They have over a third of the market share now. So they're all familiar with the video game industry, and they all have huge amounts of capital to invest in such an expensive project. It's not going to be some random company out of nowhere. Sega and Atari aren't going to have another shot at glory. They're not going to come back. It's not going to be someone we've seen before. It's going to be a new big... It's going to be a company that's already established and that's never been in the console race before. I mean, Apple technically has, but do we really want to count that? Yeah, maybe. I don't think we should count that. But Apple would actually be the most interesting one because they have pretty much dominated everything. They dominated smartphones, they dominated tablets, and they keep innovating with those, but something's telling me they want to keep stretching further and further and further. So they might release a game console, and it might actually work out for them. The problem with Apple, though, is that they're very known for releasing very high-end products. So if they try to release a very expensive console, it's like $1,000. No, that's not going to work. So that's why I'm less inclined to think it's Apple. I'm less inclined to also think it's Google. I think Amazon might be a good contender because they're very familiar. They're probably the most familiar with gaming. I wouldn't say that. They're actually probably all equally knowledgeable. But I'm saying, Google, they're very familiar because they have YouTube and there's a lot of gamers on there and they have Google Play. Amazon, they kind of have a game thing. They sell a lot of games. So they obviously, they follow that. And they also have Twitch. So they're definitely interested in investing in the video game industry if they purchase Twitch. So that's why I'm thinking Amazon is the likely of the three of them to enter into the fray down the line. Again, this is like years from now, but it's good speculation. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think out of all it could even be a company I haven't mentioned, but who do you think has the best chance of entering the console race and succeeding? I'm not talking about these Linux consoles, these Android consoles. even, like, I mean, if Google released a console, it'd obviously be based off Android, but you know what I mean. Not like these shitty consoles that can't really compete with Sony. I mean consoles that would be on an equal footing with Sony, and then they would, try to compete. These would have to be big corporations with huge amounts of capital to be able to fund a division like that. That would create a console and hire developers to make exclusive content. A lot of money. But out of all of them, out of all the companies out there, who do you think is best equipped and most likely to step into the console race? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.